Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
My name is Melissa Schammel, and I am the coordinator of this community of practice. It's great to see you all here, 2020. Can you hear me okay? Is this microphone working? Good.
Yes.
Thank you. Yes, we do have someone on the phone. So just so you know, and we also, as you know, we're recording. So this is our first meeting of 2020, and we're going to be focusing on using data to empower individuals and communities for everyone working in prevention across the state. I'm really happy to see such a full room. I know there's lots of data coming our way beginning of 2020, so it's very relevant, and we have some great speakers today, so I'm looking forward to today's agenda. So I work for the Community Health Institute and under a project called the Center for Excellence, and we are funded by the Bureau of Drug and Alcohol Services to coordinate these communities of practice. So this is the prevention community of practice. We also have peer recovery support services, an MAT, and substance use disorder treatment community of practice that we run through the center under that funding. We have a planning team that consists of myself, Katie Shea Morgan as a subject matter expert, Adelaide Murray, who couldn't be here today, as my support. We also have Jill Burke from the Bureau of Drug and Alcohol Services, Beth O'Connell from Upper Room, I think I saw her, and Julie O'Keefe. The purpose of the Prevention Community of Practice is to increase best practice knowledge relative to effective prevention, to build collegiality and professional mentoring among those delivering prevention services, to improve communication between and within systems of care addressing substance misuse, and to promote a recovery and resiliency-oriented set of principles and practice constructs. There are multiple components to this prevention community of practice, including these in-person meetings. We meet every other month. Our next meeting is March 11th, if you don't have it on your calendar. We also have conference calls if needed, if there's an urgent issue. That could be something that this community of practice could take on and coordinate. We have a bunch of resources and tools available on the Center for Excellence website. Under resources, there'll be community of practice resources and then prevention community of practice. And on those pages, you'll have tools and resources from past meetings, recordings from past meetings if you haven't been able to go. There's also a community of practice Google group. If you're not involved in the Google group and would like to be, please reach out to me. There's also, if you're not sure what a Google group is or how to participate, there's a Google group FAQ on that back resource table. Please pick that up, and if you have any questions, happy to answer them. We also provide technical assistance through the Center for Excellence. There's a technical assistance request form on the center website, and if you have any questions about what technical assistance is, or if your request falls into that, please reach out to me, myself, or anyone on the center team. I'll just point out we do have two staff here outside of the community of practice planning team, but Rachel Cohn from the Center for Excellence, and then Hannah is helping today. So for today's agenda, we'll do a round of quick introductions, just your name and your organization. We have a guest speaker all the way from our border state, Vermont, from Getting to Y. And we also have two peer perspectives from New Hampshire, so some local examples of this work. And then we're going to have a discussion about data resources and what's available and how people have used data. We'll have a wrap-up, and you have evaluations in your packets. Please fill those out. If if you are getting CTS credit, that is important for us, but we also want everyone's input on how these meetings are going. So I'm going to start with this table. If you could just, your introduction, your name, and your organization. So starting with Helen.
So, I'm Helen Beatty. I'm
Helen Beatty. I'm from Up for Learning. We'll be hearing more about our program up in Vermont, Getting to Why. I'm Sharon Kohler, also Up for Learning, and we'll be presenting about Getting to Why.
Kim Haley, Second Start.
Cora Long, SNPC for Stratford County Public Health Network.
Ann Crawford, the Bureau of Drug and Alcohol
So
Services.
there are people on the phone and we are recording, so if people could use the microphone, I would appreciate it.
Ann Crawford from the Bureau of Drug and Alcohol Services.
I'm Lindsay Messina. I'm the SNP for the Seacoast Public Health Network.
Maria Reyes with Seacoast Public Health Network, COC.
Jill Burke with the Bureau of Drug and Alcohol Services.
Olivia Abshar, Bureau of Drug and Alcohol Services.
John Minichiello, Hancock Police Department.
Susan McKeown, retired nurse practitioner and FASTER facilitator in Manchester.
Charlotte Scott, Southern Rockingham Coalition for Healthy Youth.
Celeste Clark, Raymond Coalition for Youth.
Vicki Harris, Dover Coalition for Youth.
Jay Batchelder, Pembroke School District.
Jess Morton, Division of Public Health Services, Tobacco Program. Angie Raymond Leduc, all together. Marissa Carlson, New Hampshire Teen Institute. Maura McGowan, New Hampshire Teen Institute. Janet Voluk, Nashua Prevention Coalition.
Jace Troy, Community Action for Safe Teens.
Emma Patton, New Hampshire Teen Institute. Beth O'Connell, South Central Public Health Network and Adult Strategies.
John Lopez, COC for Greater Monadnock Public Health Network.
Sarah Johnston with Reality Check.
Dawn Schimberg, Youth Assistant Program in Tilton.
Emerson Kelby, Youth Assistance Program in Tilton. Sean O'Brien, Adapt. Peter Siebert, the Keene YMCA Community Coalition.
Jennifer Selfridge, Carroll County Public Health Network.
Greg Williams, SMPC for North Country Health Consortium.
Liz Brosher, SMPC for the Central Region, and the Katie, Communities for Alcohol and Drug for Youth. Elizabeth Duffy for Network for Health and COC for South Central.
Kate McDonald, SNPC for the South Central Public Health Network.
Catalina Kirsch, Continuum of Care, Carroll County Coalition for Public Health. Lynn Haskell, Merrimack County Juvenile Services. Candace Tucker, Franklin Mayor's Drug Task Force. Kim Wade, Partnership for Public Health.
Mike McFadden, Belknap County Juvenile Diversion.
Kelly Gaspa, Partnership for Public Health.
Julie Yerkes, and I'm on the Planning Committee.
Melissa Lee with U.S. Cooperative Extension.
Stacy Lazar, Manchester Health Department.
Rachel Cohn, Community Health Institute.
Bob Thompson, North Country Health Consortium.
Hannah Lessels, Community Health Institute. Thanks for saving me the step. So I thank you, everyone. I think it's really helpful. I know it takes a little bit of time to get through everyone, but just so people know faces to names. And in that line, we also have a contact list on our Center for Excellence webpage. So people, if they hear a name and someone says something that is really connected to your work or you want to follow up, we do have that contact list available on the Center for Excellence website. Oh, sorry. The objective for today is to, and sorry, I copied and pasted from our last meeting, so it's not all of this, it's just the first sentence. So to describe major components of strategies used to engage youth with YRBS data by the Vermont Getting to Why initiative, to identify strategies used by New Hampshire prevention programs to engage individuals with their own data outcomes, to name data resources
available to prevention professionals in New Hampshire, and to discuss strategies for prevention professionals to engage and empower target audiences using data-driven approach. So with that, I will hand it over to Helen from Getting to Why.
Thank you. Company. Okay, here we go. So I'm Helen Beatty. I'm the founder and executive director of an organization in Vermont called Up for Learning. Up for Learning stands for Unleashing the Power of Partnership for Learning. And I want to tell you a teeny bit of history that will give you the backdrop for then the bulk of this presentation being about one of our initiatives, Getting to Why. It's so heartwarming to be in a room as I hear public health time and time again. My first pass in my career was, I have a master's in public health, and for 15 years I served in that arena. And so it's really near and dear to my heart. Second part of my career, I became a school psychologist. And really I have seen the weaving of those two worlds, framing what Getting to Why is all about, and what I've been privileged to be able to create and be part of over time. So very excited to be sharing that with you today. Up for Learning, it really came from a transition from public health where I felt like a lot of my work was around empowering patients and family members to feel like they had a valued voice in their care, that too often they've lost a sense of participation, of value, and sometimes of their own dignity in the process of being in the healthcare system. And when that happened, they lost a margin of healing that I felt needed to be found and optimized. When I moved into education, I thought I was going into a whole new arena, and lo and behold, witnessed the exact same thing. That the students who were referred to me for evaluations often felt like they were the problem, that they were deficient, and then they would spiral into a belief system that was predicated on that. And so what I then did was turn a corner to say nobody wanted that to happen. But the fact is the system needed to see young people as valued players. Like every young person deserved to be known and valued. They needed to have a sense of purpose, and they needed to be able to act on that purpose so that they really believed in their agency in the world. And if there isn't a prevention approach that isn't grounded in a belief system around those essential ingredients of young people really not only theoretically thinking that they should believe in themselves, but practicing it day to day because they're affecting change in their schools, that's what we set out to do. And so we have a whole variety of ways that young people partner with adults and become agents of change to the betterment of their communities. And Getting to Why was one of the first programs. So I'm going to just show you the timeline, a little bit of a timeline on what that looked like. There we go. And now I have to get close to it because I can't read it. So in 2007, the Agency of Education held the YRBS data test. And the woman who was in charge of that, the CDC contact, recognized that it was a little crazy that we have fabulous compliance and return rates on YRBS, and we had an embarrassingly low number of young people who ever got to see their data after it was collected. And she believed deeply that this data belonged to them. And only they could provide a perspective and utilize the data as a catalyst for change in a way that we would be assured is deeply connected to the realities of the lives of young people. And I had done the same work. Some of you may know of Developmental Assets, the Search Institute Developmental Assets. another framework of data where young people own that data and used it for change, and we simply transferred that to the YRBS. We believe as an organization that if young people are going to step into a role that many people do not expect them to take, we know that there's kind of a rampant underselling of what young people are capable of, that data is one of the catalysts, one of the ways that they can get a foothold to be credible and also make great decisions and assume a new position as change agents. Without that data, it's a hard road to hoe, but with YRBS data as such a credible data source that they attach high relevance to, that this was an opportunity to position them within their schools and communities in a way that was powerful, showcase their capacity for innovation, their deep caring, and their capacity to really make changes. So that happened. It started at the Agency of Education. It shifted to the Department of Health. 5 years later, the ownership and the Department of Health has us as part of their strategic plan, and they have nurtured and shepherded us as a contributor and advocate ever since then. It was replicated in Albuquerque, New Mexico. This virtual world found us, and I went down to Albuquerque, and it's been replicated in a Native American school and a large Hispanic school, and then multiple others. So it says it's not just a Vermont bubble thing, that when you give young people meaningful roles and a simple process to let them act on it, it works wherever the setting is. Most recently, where I just want to highlight, we were able to work with New Mexico. They're helping us crunch data. We were able to publish in a peer-reviewed journal and qualitative data, and very soon we'll be coming out with a quantitative data that is all incredibly affirming of the impact of this program. So without further ado, Sharon has been a field-based. She shepherded this work in one particular high school, was like a face I love to see walk in the door in the early years with a team of students. So she's lived this deeply for over a decade and has become the coordinator and couldn't be a better spokesperson or for this. So I'm going to totally hand this over to Sharon now and let her give you a sense of what it's all about. Do you want me to take a clicker? Sure. So we are going to give you a kind of overview of how we do this. How do we put the data in the hands of the youth and let them bring meaning and then share that with their community, create change in their school and community. It's basic. We have a 6-step process, which I'm just going to touch on, and then we're going to show you a video, which I think it's a hard thing to visualize, and so we've got a video that we're going to show you, so bear with us, but I think it gives you a much better sense. You hear from the youth, and you see some of the steps in action. But basically, what you're going to see is we conducted training, which is a youth and adult-led training, so students are learning from their peers. A core team comes with an adult advisor from each of the schools or communities that is participating in Getting to Why, and they come and they learn in a really hands-on way. How does this look? How do you analyze data? How do you recruit peers? How do you build an asset web? So we run them through those activities. They then go back to their own school, and that core team recruits a larger group of peers, and they lead a data analysis retreat, which sounds kind of dry, but they have a great time doing it. And we encourage them to recruit 15 to 20 as representative of their community as they can recruit for that one-day data analysis, because the more voices you have looking at the data, the better results you're going to have. They finish the day with a map of their assets, their community and school assets, and also top concerns they see in the data and top strengths they see in the data. They spend some time doing root cause analysis. What are the root causes of our concern areas, and doing some action brainstorming. The next step, the core team then hosts a community dialogue event where they bring in members of their community and school, adult and youth, and present what they've done so far and lead dialogue around root causes, action steps, and try to really hone in on some things that they can do, that they have the capacity and power to do, and hopefully recruit some support from community members as well. They implement one or two action steps that year. They can certainly carry that over into the coming year and implement more actions, but really the focus is on doing something to create change around their concern areas and build on their strengths. At the end of the year, we encourage them to celebrate their work, publish in their school newsletter, in their newspaper. We publish a newsletter, which you all have a copy of, that highlights what they've done, because we feel it's important to celebrate their work. And also, the more public opportunities you have to present this information, the more dialogue happens, and the more kind of the youth priorities are spread. And then the teams try to keep it moving by recruiting new students for the next year, maybe helping promote the importance of taking the YRBS survey seriously the next year, continue with action steps. So it's really a cyclical process that schools can do, or community groups can do, over and over again, which is what, as Helen said, when I was working in a high school, we did this for 10 years, and it was really powerful. A lot of things happened, and culture shifts began to happen, even not just concrete changes that we had implemented, but also just kind of a culture shift in terms of looking at youth as experts in their own health and wellness. So the next piece that we'd like to do is have you, if you'll bear with us, sit through a short video, which Melissa's going to cue up. Well, it's 12 minutes. So, but it'll really give you a sense of what it looks like, because it's kind of abstract until you see it in action. Should I turn this off? Yeah, that's a good idea.
To even just get students thinking about these problems, I think a lot of times students and adults both sort of push aside the problems and think about, don't tend to think about why things are happening. And so even if it's just starting a conversation about the problems that we're experiencing in our schools, I think it's helpful.
We're here to look at the results of the Vermont Youth Survey and determine what course of action we could take based on those data. But not sure about the specifics. I'm looking forward to see where it goes.
So the Youth Risk Behavior Survey is a survey that's taken every other year by young people across the country, and it's used to sort of get a snapshot of health and risk behaviors that young people are showing or experiencing.
I've seen some of the YRBS data for our area, but that doesn't mean I know how to effectively interpret it and use it.
And it just kind of felt like we weren't being listened to and a little, like, talked down to. And
There's a lot of dialogue between adults about what can we do to fix this problem. I see it when people are talking about electronic vapor products, when people are talking about marijuana use.
I'm kind of excited to get a little bit more of a smaller conversation going with students and try to get more of their perspective and ideas of where this could go.
Y'all should have folders, and those are going to be your materials for the day. From the sort of practical sense, it teaches the students how to lead the activities and what they're going to be doing, and just kind of immerses them in the material and in what we're going to be looking at. And what you to do is, at your table, just take 5 minutes to look through some of the data and try and think about anything that's surprising, something you think that might be a strength in your school, or something that's concerning to you.
Okay.
But it's definitely shocking.
Yeah.
Okay, texted or emailed while driving a car. Huge percentage of sport-related concussions. So that was kind of interesting. Was that something that you were, like, really surprised by? Yeah. I'm surprised by it. Secondly, one of the really great things about this training is the way in which it brings together students from different schools.
These are a framework that we're going to use to look at what are some of the strengths in your own community. So Nadia's going to tell you a little bit about those, and then we're going to get into an activity.
So it's really important to think about assets when you're thinking about the strengths and even the concerns in your community.
Burr Burton has a really robust theater and athletics program.
Maybe you should talk about the support groups, and then I can talk about the leadership summit, because that's kind of,
There were, I think, 80 people here from high schools, all the way from the very southmost county of the state to the northmost county of the state.
and so it's really interesting to go to the high school training is usually first, to go to the high school training and hear these really deep ideas about certain problems, and hear, you know, students really considering the different things that they can implement in their school and how they're going to make things happen, and then go to the middle school training and just see all this excitement.
So for middle school, we actually had a record-breaking group. We had 12 schools. We've never had that many schools before.
Right now, we're starting to gather information. You're also going to gather folks together. You're going to analyze the data, hopefully by the end of November. You're going to share that data and your analysis of it, hopefully January with your community. And then you're going to move to action, take some of your concerns and make changes. And at the very end of the year, reflect on how you did.
You can tell that they know that what they're doing is important, and so even though they're only 10 or 11, they're thinking about what they want to do and really considering what is best for their school. 21% in South Supervisory Union felt sad or hopeless in the past year, and then 19% in Vermont felt sad or hopeless in the past year.
It's like 19% isn't exactly like a big number, but it's still not like, it's still a big issue.
Yes, we are getting up there, we are getting the necessary information out there, but when they start thinking about, like, how would I change these activities to better fit my school, how am I going to implement this, I think that that's the really important part.
It sounds like you want a more equitable way of inviting people this year. Okay, so I think that's a good thing to visit with this group. And are we going to have an application process?
Yeah, they should do that, so like they give a good reason why they want to come and what they are hoping to get out of it.
It can be scary, especially for younger students, to speak to a group of, 130 people, but when students are ready and they raise their hand and they get ready up and they want to share, you can tell that they're really excited about and engaged in the material that they're working with.
We have a lot of social justice groups and groups for students in the LGBTQ plus community.
Like for your religion or whatever, people could see that as weird and not normal. So I guess they could support you for that.
Like on the sports team, you have your teammates and they support you. And then out of school, we have our families and friends.
So we hope they walk away with an understanding of the process, the tools, at least some of the tools that they need to implement the program back in their own school, confidence that they can be the ones standing up there and leading others through this process, and that they're excited. After the training, the core group goes back to school or community and recruits hopefully a representative group of their peers, and they host a data analysis retreat where between 20 and 30 youth come together and they look at the data, their own data.
There are experts that can help you get a grip on what's going on. So don't hesitate to ask them. And these guys are going to run our show today.
Yeah.
All right, so you guys can have a seat in our place too.
Let's do this. All right, hello everyone. I'm Luca DeRuza, and this is
Mila Smith.
Yes, this is. Anyhow, so today we're going to give you some facts, some hard facts, and we want your thoughts on about these facts.
We're going to think of, I think Brad as a group is going to think of some proposed action steps to help stop, think about what's good on the survey, but also think about what we can do to stop the not so good things.
Sure, tell what one person thinks is the group discussion and proposed action steps to move forward to get the best possible results.
I've been really impressed with how the students are able to have those uncomfortable conversations very openly and respectfully, and with an ability to show a lot of empathy in terms of understanding other people's experiences.
All of it relates to the females, like females harming themselves without wanting to die. They had been forced to have sexual intercourse, or like they feel that they don't matter to the community.
They should feel like they can speak out and they can make a change in their school, and this percentage doesn't show that.
It's not that surprising, like all fields are concerned for all of the things, one root cause.
It's pretty novel to have youth using this data to create dialogue and to decide what they think is important, and then have change happen because of their priorities.
So here's what we got. Our 3 concerns. Number 1, 10% of students seriously thought about killing themselves. Number 3, 9% of folks bullied someone else in the past 30 days. And number 6, 47% think that alcohol would be sort of easy or very easy to get.
They come to a decision as a group about what their top 3 concerns and their top 3 strengths are from the data. They spend some time talking about root causes and then developing a preliminary action plan. The core group and anyone from the data analysis who would like to join them plans a community dialogue event where they share their priorities and what they've done with their community.
Tonight, you will have an opportunity to review the work our students did that day and help identify more assets to support our community may have to help address our concerns.
And they will generally invite people from school, they'll invite community agencies that maybe have some connection to their concern areas, parents.
So somebody that's THC in the system that I'm smoking, their brain is not working at full capacity.
There's a ton of resources out there to educate. Like that's something that exists already that makes everybody's work easier.
And the idea is at that point to really hone in on some action steps that can happen.
Like that's what you were saying, instead of just teaching, oh, this is bad for you, don't eat this, teach healthy lifestyles, healthy ways of living, and going off of that.
The lack of food as well, and the steps that need to be taken would be to communicate the need to donate food if you're able.
So it really can change the culture of a school and a community to one of looking at youth as partners in their own education, in their own health, rather than recipients of adult ideas and programs and efforts.
With this, like, teaching the body positivity, like, but to an extent, obviously.
They make it fun, like cooking classes.
Yeah.
Things like that.
Yeah.
Kind of lost that. I mean, when I was going to high school, like home ec was still a part of the school.
Yeah,
they just got.
Yeah, but I heard that. That's what I heard.
One of the things that can be really powerful is how this conversation that starts with the youth identifying their concerns in the data can really affect other people's thinking.
And I would like to see family and consumer sciences being brought back to Oxbow and being part of the curriculum, because it addressed both of those.
And people take action in their own realm of influence beyond the students actually having to plan and take an action.
Trying to find local resources for you guys to access as you try to get the Team Food Shelf off the ground.
Students who I've known for a long time who have really become very civically involved after being involved in Getting to Why, just because I think it spurs something in them that they want to make a difference in, and they feel the confidence and have the skill to do that after participating in something like this. An example of how the dialogue can motivate others to implement some kind of a change is at Oxbow, where they identified food insecurity as one of their top concerns. Another student who attended, who happens to be part of the National Honor Society, made the connection between So getting to why teams concern and some things that they have been talking about at the National Honor Society. So they actually took that concern and decided to create the food shelf based on the community dialogue that he had attended.
It's the Oxbow Food Shelf, and it's a place where you can take food if you need it, free, and you can place food in it if you want. It's really for anyone, but like we're trying to make it so people who need the food can have this food.
You're the team. What do we see as happening in the fall with this group?
So we keep this food shelf,
Right.
and expand on it, put a little more focus on mental health.
Healthy relationships?
I noticed those were kind of problem areas in our kind of data.
I guess anxiety, depression, and trying to help people who have that.
We did have quite a few people from the mental health community at our community events, so maybe we could reach out to them to see what kinds of things, resources they would have to bring into the school.
I feel like the most important thing we can do is to join as a multi-generational community to work on issues that really matter. So for me, I think that's the magic of the work.
Thank you for indulging us, but it feels like it's easier when you can actually see it happening. It's one thing to talk about it, but another to actually hear from the youth themselves and see what they're actually doing. And one of the things that really strikes me is that really there are 11-year-olds doing this, and they have these intense conversations about really important and powerful topics, and it blows your socks off when you see this happening. So it's nice to get a little glimpse of that, I think. So I was just going to run through really quickly each of the steps. You've already seen them, but if you have one or two questions, we're going to have time at the end for a general discussion, but if you have a question about one of the steps, please feel free. We can take a couple questions now. So again, we start with the training, which you saw in action. Those were some big events. They're co-facilitated by young people, which is an important part of the way Up for Learning operates. It's all about youth-adult partnerships. So we model that for the students. Interactive, as you saw in the video, learning things that they will lead back in their own communities. This is a sample agenda for our training day, just in case you want to kind of see what it looks like. We meet in Vermont, we meet in Montpelier, which is kind of a central location for folks all around Vermont. We always get feedback at the end of the day, and one of the most important things to the participants is the ability to connect with each other, students from other schools and communities, and we try to build fun into everything that we do, because we all need that, but it's especially when you're young, it's an important part of the day, fun and connection. We use a strengths-based approach, as you probably saw the big asset web that we had up on the wall. We encourage them to start each of their events with that approach as well. It's really easy when you're looking at data to get focused on the negativity and this is terrible, and when you start by identifying existing assets, it really just sets the tone, especially with a multi-generational conversation and the community dialogue. It is super important to start from that place of strength and what can we celebrate and what can we build on as we're working on our improving things in our health data. The second thing you saw was the data analysis retreat, which the students host back at their own school. Again, starting with the assets, we've got two ways that we teach to do that. Search Institute's developmental assets is one approach we use. They create an actual asset web. Another is the Circle of Courage, which a lot of Vermont pediatricians use. I don't know if it's something that you're familiar with here, but it's got 4 quadrants of strength that is used as a basis for identifying assets. They go through data analysis, which oddly enough is a favorite part of the data analysis retreat for many young people. They love looking at their own data, and they really do an excellent job. We have, again, a framework that we give them to kind of structure it. But each school will do it a little differently. You can see, one of the reasons I included those top two pictures is on the left, top left is one school that had PowerPoint and charts, and the second school that put sticky notes on the backs of students and hoodies, and so everybody customizes it to what their school, what their community is comfortable with. And bottom right, you see some really young kids. Those are 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade kids, totally diving into their data and loving it, and coming up with really important points. They map their root causes, which we think is very important to look at why things are happening, not just what is happening, and start to think of solutions. Again, connections, data, dialogue, and fun are all important parts of the data analysis as well. Community dialogue event then happens with the core group, and they often will invite peers that participated in the data analysis. In my own school, I saw that was a great way for students who maybe are not often in a leadership role and aren't often seen as being the typical leaders to step in, because now they're starting to see themselves as experts. So they may join in with this core group to do the community dialogue, and it's a great stepping stone to seeing themselves in a different light, and to have people in the school or community see them in a different light. A sample community dialogue agenda. And again, the dialogue is really an important piece of this, getting people talking about what matters to the youth, what the adult perspectives are. Dialogue is super important. Action plan implementation, all kinds of things happen, from little teeny projects, maybe a poster campaign, to having policy change around condom availability in schools, to starting a community-wide teen center. You saw at Oxbow, they started an in-school food shelf. So it can be little things, or it can be big things. They might host a speaker, or they might start a teen center. It really depends on what the group capacity is and how much support they get from their community. We wanted to have you, with that in mind, looking at action implementation, we wanted you to take a minute to look at, I think in your handouts, you've got a sheet that has some of these, getting to why actions. So it's an actual list of actions that were taken as of May, at the end of the last school, May 2019. So Helen's going to lead you through a short activity, very short. So if you could locate this, please, and we just invite you for 1 minute to sink into some of the actions that have been taken by teens. These were, there are many plans, and often from that fall some definitive actions in the given year. This is a list of actually what teams did last year. And so I invite you to just get a sense of that for 1 minute, but then know that you will have 2 minutes to talk to a peer about what of this list stood out for you, or any other aspect of what stood out for you in the presentation up to this point in time. So giving you a breather and a way to begin to chew on this information yourself. All right, for the sake of time, however far you got on that list is exactly where you should have gotten to. I invite you to turn to one other person at your table, and you have 2 minutes to please share just reflections of what stood out for you on that list, and or any other aspect of getting to why that has created questions or intrigue or has been notable. So 2 minutes, here we go. Shared time. One more minute. Last thought? Okay, if we could call you back, please. We are gone. All right. So if we're we are going to open this up to general questions in a couple minutes. Hopefully we've seeded a few of those thoughts or questions or reflections. Sharon's just going to give you a few last tidbits, and then we'll move into a more open dialogue. And we have a little time at the end of the session as well. So here we go. Did you have something?
What is a Ghost Scout?
Oh, a Ghost Scout is it's a sad activity that highlights impaired or distracted driving. Which is a sad organization promotes,
SAC students again?
Yes, destructive decisions, yes. So I think one of the teams used one of the sad activities.
So they walk around and
yes, to highlight the percentage of, or the numbers are representative of general statistics. Yeah. All right, is everybody ready? I know it's hard to stop talking about all these exciting things, but I'm going to just finish up real quick and then we'll go to questions. So again, we talked in the video about reflecting and celebrating. These are just some articles that have been in papers or newsletters. We, again, really encourage people to create as much awareness of what they've done as possible. We also connect all of our schools with their local health liaisons and prevention consultants through ADAP, or alcohol, I don't know what the acronym is here, but the alcohol and drug abuse programs and also the health department, because they're wonderful supports in terms of getting resources, having local pediatricians or prevention experts. One of the schools in Montpelier got really connected with their domestic and sexual violence prevention program because they had identified sexual violence as one of their top concerns, and they are continuing that relationship so much so that they were written into a grant that the local agency applied for and got. So they'll be partnering as a youth voice component of a big grant because of their identifying that in their school as a concern. And then again, we encourage people to keep it moving, and these are some of the ideas about how they do that. So we provide, because this has been around for a while, we've got some really good materials. Each team gets a manual with tons of resources. It's got the rationale, but it also has sample agendas. It has icebreaker activities, pretty much everything we could think of that they might need to do. Question rating form to help them go through their data, asset web template. So we've got a handy manual that's online and also paper copy that all of the teams get. And then this is our contact information. If you have any questions later on, my card's also on the back table. So I think that's it for the stuff we had to go through. I would love to hear, Helen and I would both love to hear and answer any questions that you have. I think we have about 5 minutes or so for questions, comments. Yeah.
My biggest question is there a certain group of people that you find pulling away from this that what I have found, and it breaks my heart amongst everything else I see, is there's a whole group of people, young kids especially, that have given up on life at such an early age. They have no faith, they have no hope, no meaning in their life, and then they go home to dysfunction times 10. And then what they're doing is they're turning to alcohol and drugs to feel better. I mean, everybody wants to feel better, and you know, you go there, and I speak to people on a daily basis, and I go like, what are you thinking? Everything that comes out of their mouth is negative, 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 negative. There's not a positive thing that comes out.
How does that?
Yeah, does this program, do you find people that there are certain students that pull away? How do you get to them? That's my biggest question.
That's a great question, and certainly we can't reach everyone through this program, but I have found, as a practitioner of it, that I was an SAP, a Student Assistance Program counselor, when I was running this in a school, and it felt that this was a very accessible approach for a wide variety of students. And sometimes the students who would come to these data analysis retreats, or who would then become part of the core group, were kids who had been suspended for a substance use violation, or who had been in my office or a guidance counselor's office a lot because of depression or whatever. But they are experts too, and I think this values such a wide range of experiences, and because it then leads to dialogue. And there's not really a right or wrong when you're having dialogue. It's really, you're getting lots of different perspectives, and your voice matters, but so does the voice of everybody else at the table. So I think it really is, it can be an uplifting experience, and it validates each person's perspective and each person's experience. So even if it's someone who's coming from kind of a dark place or a troubled place, they can actually engage in a pretty meaningful way. And some of the schools will kind of recruit from more of the traditional leader groups, and others have a really broad range of kids come to the training, and you can see that they feel connected through this approach of looking at actual data, which addresses all kinds of strengths and concerning areas. They each have something to contribute. Yes, there are going to be a few who just cannot get to the place of being hopeful, but starting from the strengths-based perspective, everyone can usually identify at least one, even if it's just a person in there that is an asset. I remember going to one school where they had an asset web that was almost all names. It was, instead of big concept things, they were just writing down all the people who they felt were, and hopefully everybody has at least one of those they can add. So I think this particular approach is more accessible than others in terms of connecting with those kids who are having a struggling place. Yeah.
Just a really quick story. The community dialogue opportunity, where there's an absolute priority on a diverse group of students. In one school, there was one child I particularly remember who was from that place of a continuous struggle. He then became a leader he was part of the analysis. And then on the dialogue night, he stood and told his story. And I don't think there was an adult who knew him, who had a dry eye, that they had seen him as a totally different child. And in this moment, he found his place of rightness and dignity. And I think that's the opportunity here, that these children are no longer seen as the problem or deficient, but rather part of the solution. And they have a platform and a credible way for them to assume a role that affirms exactly that reality. And until we start giving them the platform, that stereotype will only feed the discouragement.
Great question. Should we bring the mics up?
So I have one comment about what was just said, and then one quick question. But for many of us that have been involved with the CADCA trainings and know Teresa Bishop, who's one of the fantastic leaders of some of their programs, she coined a phrase when we had our training with her that we need to change the wording from a youth at risk to youth at promise, because they live up to their labels, or down, whichever way you put them. My other question is, in Nashua, we have 2 high schools, 3 middle schools. We do the middle school YRBS, the coalition pays for it. We do the high school YRBS through the state. And the one thing that we have never done is to share individual results with the community. The schools get their individual results, but they don't want us publicizing that, because then you've got, oh, well, Nashua High School North is way better than Nashua High School South, or Fairground Middle, or whatever. And even in communities around us, you know, that Jason and I talked about it, that, you know, they have some very upper-class communities and then some very low-income communities that they work with. And, you know, they don't combine them either. And in some cases, you know, we may not have gotten approved to do this by the Board of Education in the middle school if they knew we were going to be separating out. So how do you handle that part of it?
So in Vermont, the schools do get their SU, Supervised Union School District reports, and the comparison generally is between the state results and the when a school is looking, when the youth are looking at their results, they are seeing the state results and their schools. So we don't see a lot of comparison between communities, even in, like, I live in a county that has 3 different school districts, and I just don't hear those conversations. So I don't know if it's just a norm that has developed over time. But there is also the option of using any level of the data. You could use county level data, you could use state level data. We find that the youth really value seeing their own data, you know, knowing that this is me, this is my community. But you can define the community in a larger context if that's helpful. Yeah, and that's fine. I think it must just be a norm that's developed over time with people having access to that local data and not making those kinds of comparisons, because there are so many factors that come into it. But every school will have some things that they're really proud of, and every school will have something that they're really concerned about. And because we're looking at it from a problem-solving approach, it's not, ooh, that's bad, you know, you're a bad school. It's, okay, here's something that we can work to improve using the strengths and the assets that we have. So maybe it's just something, but you certainly can do it at a county level or state level of data if that is more helpful.
Some of my questions have been answered. Comment first, we do this in Manchester. We brought in national leadership training groups, and we brought together 8 high schools, well, not 8, yeah, about 8 different schools. And some of the kids that came to that original leadership group were honest in why. We asked right on the form, why did you come? And they say they just wanted to get out of class. 3 in particular right now, some that have graduated from our group, have gone on and have spoken nationally. So to address that, when you empower them, they get their footing, they feel like they have a sense of purpose. And one of the comments from one of our students, who's current now, says that she feels that she has a voice, not only in her school and community, but she feels empowered nationally now. So that's really impactful. A question, and it was surrounding the YRBS. Part of it was answered regarding schools letting the information get out. In Manchester, we have different high schools, and so we group them together. We do a district-wide because of that. You know, one school gets more than the other, which actually they do, but I'm not saying that out loud. And then we have some very affluent schools and communities. And one of the things that the students, and we were wondering if the kids were gonna say, oh, you know, they're better than us, or we're terrible or something, they found what they drew out of those comparisons, we all make them, that even though it was a wealthy school, they shared the same problems. And that right there was really important to draw out. My other thought was, you do YRBS, how long does it take from the time?
The quick turnaround in the last few cycles, as you all know, has been incredible.
Ever?
No, yes.
Okay.
I think we're all in the same boat with the change in how the data is prepared. I would just like to put an exclamation point on starting with strengths and the identification, often those schools who are struggling with socioeconomic variables, the richness, when you have them do asset mapping, the richness of community, and the naming of that is perhaps rivals or even exceeds those of some of the more affluent areas. And just that continuous affirmation, like we don't have to be embarrassed. We don't have to assume that label or the stereotypes that go with that name us or own us anymore when we choose to see a rightful side of who we are that is imbued with strength, like saturated with strength. And that's why we always start with an asset perspective and also say some of our solutions lie in those strengths. So, you know, it's not just a strategy to feel good about what exists, it's to say, here are some of your answers. And when you go into action phase, you go back and look at that asset map and say, what can you do more of that's having an impact in your community? You don't have to do something new necessarily, but do more of what you do well. And how encouraging is that for people to recognize, wow, like we've got the building blocks, we just need to do more. So that's a huge theoretical part of the construction of our process that I think I would never be negotiable.
In this generation, I find very empathetic.
Yeah.
And willing to just really jump into that other person's shoe. I just found that, I find the adults, when we get out into the community, have far more labels.
Yes.
They're cautioned with them, they're very cautious as how they use them now to be politically correct, but they are black and white on their face when they talk.
Absolutely.
And the kids are the ones that usually correct them.
Cut to the chase.
Yeah. There's hope.
Yeah, there is a lot of it in this realm.
Yes. I want to make sure that we have enough time for our New Hampshire examples, and then also time for more discussion, facilitated discussion. We can talk about all these things. Any burning questions you might have could probably be answered at that point.
Thank you.
Thank you both so much. So I am going to invite Liz Brochu up to share about her program. I believe the microphone is like weird when you stand back here, but okay. I'll try my best. And we're running about 5 minutes behind, so I'll just. Okay. I am going to stick to my notes so I can stay on time, and it was a late night last night. My daughter has ear infection, so I will stay on my notes. So I apologize if I'm looking down. But my name is Liz Brochu. I'm the Substance Abuse Prevention Coordinator for the Central Region, and also the Certified Prevention Specialist for Communities for Alcohol and Drug for Youth in Plymouth. So Greg and I were actually asked to share information on our data implemented utilization in our approach. Both Greg and I are substance misuse prevention coordinators, and there are also 11 other substance misuse prevention coordinators, or SMPCs, and I'll be using SMPCs throughout my presentation. So we all do similar work. Can everybody, the SMPCs, can you just raise your hand around the room?
So we have 5 of us here, 6 of us here today, but there are 13 of us in all, 13 regions. We also have a lot of DFCs, so drug-free communities in the room, and we have Dover Youth Teens Institute, ADAPT, and so we have some really great programming in the room already, so this is really fantastic. So Greg is actually going to speak about his dynamic youth program in the North Country. I'm going to kind of switch it up a little bit, and I'm going to speak a little bit about our newest program, which is the Parent Advocacy Council at Katy. So I'm gonna talk about that. All right. Where do I go? Here. Oh no. Okay. There we go. So my predecessor, SMPC, Polly Morris, some of you know Polly Morris, actually proposed the idea for increased parent involvement in prevention. And I inspired and implemented the program 3 years ago. So every year, the SMPCs create logic models, so we all love our logic models, to map and measure program outcomes. So Polly actually completed the logic model, and I stepped in as lead SMPC with a logic model already submitted and underway. So when I looked at the logic model, I actually became really concerned. As identified outcomes were, let me just read this, increased parental disapproval of alcohol, tobacco, and drugs, increased parental knowledge about how to talk to their children and set parameters and boundaries regarding substance misuse, and decrease parental apathy and permissiveness. So 3 very lofty goals. Big goals, and at the time, we didn't have any parent involvement activities at the time, so no strategies. We had no strategies to address these. So if we expected to achieve these outcomes, we need parent involvement ASAP and focus strategies and specific activities. So as we all know, getting parents to the table is an extraordinary feat. I'm going to keep messing up on these. Okay, down. So in looking at the YRBS data from the 2017 survey, we learned that the Central Region's 30-day use continues to be relatively high compared to the New Hampshire statewide averages. Our youth were essentially telling us that they weren't getting prevention messaging at home from their parents regarding drugs and alcohol. Almost half of the parents were not having the conversation with their children about the dangers of substance misuse, so 46% in Hemi-Baker and the Newfound region. So we know from research that kids who learn about the risks of drug misuse from their parents are half as likely as their peers to try and use drugs. So silence isn't golden when it comes to substance misuse. And we like to share this, what's your message, and I'll have this on the back table. This was actually created, I'm blanking on her name, but she's from Nashua.
Betsy Hood in the Nashua.
Betsy Hood, yes, and we use this at every parent, our outreach. It's phenomenal. It really gives some talking points and lets them know where they are. So thank you, Betsy Hood. So my challenge was to increase parent perception of harm and disapproval. Being that we lacked information for parents or even data, we had to base our decision from what the youth was telling us, so the youth feedback. It was clear that we needed to listen directly from parents if we wanted to increase parental perception of harm. The challenge continued as we were seeking to work with the 2 most normalized substances, which was alcohol and marijuana, and still is. So locally, we've seen a downward trend, so the softening of the perception of risk of marijuana in parents. So So it was clear we needed a new way to reach parents and get them involved in prevention and keep them involved over the long term. So I was literally getting ready to push the boulder uphill, not only by developing this program, but pitching it to my executive director. So I brought the idea to Deb, and I was met with immediate resistance. So, and if you know Deb, she's always the one who's like, let's do this, we're going for it, yes. She said, no, absolutely not. So for those who work in the field and who have worked with parents, we know how difficult it is to generate interest in extracurricular activities outside of school, sports, the theater, and art. Really difficult. So we've sponsored parent-centered initiatives in the past only to have really low attendance. So rather than investing limited resources into another failed parent-focused initiative, she actually suggested us contact BDAS and change the goals and the logic model. So, no, we didn't even do this. I didn't even let it get to that. So this negative response she gave me, it made me even more determined. So then I actually brought back the YRBS data. So this is where we started using the data right at the beginning. And I really wanted to underscore how important it is and what the data was telling us. And we needed this creative parent approach. I presented the data to her and asked, how are we going to move the needle without parent involvement? Because that is the missing link. The data demonstrated why this initiative was so important. Plus, I really believed in it. And now, Deb actually is really proud of this initiative, and she actually was the one who wanted me to present it today, so just wanted to plug that for her. All right, so after I got Deb on board, she agreed with me to go to the surrounding PTAs and PTOs to present local data and resources. So the parents that we spoke to were really locked in. So when we started sharing the data, especially at Plymouth Elementary School, they were really concerned about the age of onset. So we then, this is a data in the slide that we show pretty much at every prevention presentation that we do, and some of you are familiar with this. This is the SAMHSA data to enforce the need of prevention education at an earlier age. So Deb says that the pink elliptical, I don't know if everyone can see that, but that is the addiction pipeline, she calls it. And it represents the age of onset, with 90 of those struggling with the addiction, beginning substance misuse before the age of 18. So that is the surge, the pink elliptical. And I don't know if everyone can see that. So right here, that's the pink elliptical, the addiction pipeline. So this really captured the attention of the parents, showing the age of onset, and this actually shows 12 as being the age of onset. After seeing this, the parents of Plymouth PTA wanted to begin even earlier prevention education at age 9 and 10, so the 5th grade. Plymouth Elementary School does have a middle school health class that goes through alcohol, tobacco, and other drugs, but the parents wanted social emotional education even earlier. So we not only generated the interest of the PAC, the Parent Advisory Council, but we actually seeded the PAC's very first initiative, bringing in-school prevention education to Plymouth Elementary School 5th and 6th grade. So the first PAC meeting was October 18th, 2017. And the parents created the vision and started planning the first annual Shout Out to Parents event, and I will talk about that a little bit later in the presentation.
So the PAC vision is to foster empowering interaction among community stakeholders with a focus on giving voice to parent ideas and concerns, as well as encouraging and enhancing parent participation and involvement in our community. So it's really that giving that voice and empowering them. So the top parent concerns, following our initial PTA meetings, identified was the number one concern was the addiction crisis. Oh man, I have 5 minutes and I'm just like, so there was the addiction crisis. So they got the launch of the programming. So Lions Quest curriculum, I don't know if everyone's familiar with Lions Quest. So the 5th and 6th grade at Plymouth Elementary School had Lions Quest, or started the Lions Quest programming. And the PTA realized that it was the age of onset was really scary, so they realized that. And now the Lions Quest curriculum is in PES, and also 2 districts and 7 schools now. So once again, this is all because of the vital data and the parent call to action. And when Jewel came on board in 2018, in January, when we all kind of figured that out, the parents wanted as much information as possible, and we delivered, and they were able to mobilize other parents, and they shared information through social media, word of mouth, and they were able to get that information out as soon as possible. So this is the survey that we had the PAC fill out, and this was really to collect a baseline data for parents, so their needs and concerns, and what we've been lacking in the past. So this is, so that's the survey that we worked off of. So every meeting we share, I'm sorry, I'm kind of trying to rush through this. We do education. We have 30 minutes at the end of the beginning of every meeting for updates or educational information for Katie to bring to the table. So this is data, state initiatives, Katie events, etc. So they can actually take this information and they're able to continue with the topic and or make a project out of it and bring it to their peers as well. There's time for support, so parents can bring their concerns that they're dealing with and share it with other parents in the room. That's a huge need that they really want to have an opportunity to network. Fundraising, they actually wrote grants for the in-school programming, so the data that we gave them, they put that into grant fundraising for their schools. They've done testimonies for the marijuana legalization and actually had their children as well, so they taught their children and gave them information. And then our annual shout out to parents, which is every November. We were inspired because there's a National Parent Involvement Day in November. We kind of spurred it as National Parent Involvement Month. So in November, the PAC plans and mobilizes other parents to attend this event to celebrate parents. And it's 100% about parents and guardians. And this year was the first year we opened it up to grandparents. So it's a group of highly influential, they're influential on the lives of the children. So, and as you can kind of see, the theme is mental health. So in 2017, it was parent mental health. 2018, mental health and resiliency. We had Lynn Lyons come in. And then 2019 was technology and the mental health impact on health and well-being. So it's a night of education, networking, and fun with great food, live bands, and it's a place where parents they're able to enjoy a night out and with other parents who are or have gone through the same experiences. One thing that the PAC really wanted to do was Parenting Wisdom Initiative. So the parents get together, they brainstorm, and we have parenting wisdom on our website, and we share with other parents. So it connects them all. And then we also do a post-survey at the end of the event. These are to gather more parent data. This is the data that we got, and some future topics that they want to hear about: more mental health, childhood stressors, safe travel to and from schools, depression in youth, pornography and vaping, encouraging kids to try new things, body image. So it's really interesting what kind of topics parents want to learn about. So this is a picture of our PAC team, well, some of them, but it's a lot of fun at the PAC shout out. So after seeing how successful the PAC has been in the Plymouth area, 2020 is going to be the year to spearhead the Newfound PAC, and that's the Newfound Bristol area. So this was always my intention to have a PAC in the Plymouth and Newfound area. However, I needed to create a successful and sustainable program before introducing the initiative in a community where the highest risk indicators and low community readiness, and that's the Newfound region. So with the help of principals, community coalitions, local community centers, and one or two interested parents already, the recruiting process for 2020 Newfound PAC is already on the way, it's on the way, and our goal is to have 5 to 8 interested parents come the first meeting, which is February 13th. So we're going into this with our eyes open and knowing that the Newfound PAC is going to be a challenge. But just like the initial idea of the PAC, I am determined and I know it's worth the investment. So thank you, and that's all. Thank you so much, Liz. Sorry, we're running a little bit behind. So we're gonna have to cut a little bit of the discussion at the end, but we'll give Greg 10, 15 minutes. And so Greg is joining us here from the North Country Health Consortium. He is the prevention coordinator up in the northernmost region of the state.
Yes. Hi, I'm Greg Williams, and I am from the North Country, so it is different up there. And we had some snow this morning, so I want to give a special thank you to whoever invited me to speak today. Be up 2 hours early. Thanks to the one. I'm not going to point fingers, but thanks for the wonderful ride through the notch that I'll never forget. I got to see a lot of the notch. It was about 20 miles an hour, so. But thank you. So today, I'm going to talk about a couple of things. One of them being youth empowerment and how we do it. We all do it our different ways, but there's a lot of similarities, and you'll see some of them. Oh.
Tricky.
Go the other way. Okay, and obviously this is about data, so what types of data do we use? And how does it inform what we do? And I will be going quick. How do we use it to best leverage success? There we go, it's even quicker. How well do we listen to our youth, and how well do we speak their language? Okay.
Sorry.
Yep. Okay. And here's a little data point that most of us, we get our data like this. We see the percentage of high school students reporting e-cigarette use is climbing. And what we're going to get into is how we deal with it and how we've been dealing with it. As prevention is disseminating the education and knowledge of the problem that we're dealing with. Obviously, disseminating knowledge like this, about nicotine salts and how they can get into your lungs quicker and all that kind of stuff. It's all great stuff to disseminate to the public informationally. don't know why it's coming up, but how does the data drive what we do? And what we're gonna highlight is our Up Granite Youth Conference, and that's ironically similar to Up for Learning, right? I mean, I did not know about that before. But, I'm gonna go back real quick, right? I'm just gonna go back to, one slide right here. Current trends. This slide. All right, so when we look at this, we look at, the increase to 27%, right? But our approach, although we want to drive down those numbers, we think of it more like driving up the numbers that you don't see, like the 63% or 73%, whatever it is, that you don't see. We're trying to drive those numbers up by empowering youth, okay? So that's what our Up conference is kind of about. All right, so the Up Granite Youth Conference, it's an annual celebration of positive experience shared by North Country youth, they're brought together regionally to share uplifting stories that inspire their peers to take action and lead each other in a positive direction by example. And that, hopefully, will drive the numbers of the YRBS in a positive direction. We hold it at the Mount Washington Hotel, and like I said, it's a celebration, so we shower these kids with some gifts. We kind of celebrate the positive things that they're doing. We make a really big effort to celebrate what they're doing, have it at a lavish place, and it's been great. But it started out in 2016. It was a small event, very successful though. There was no budget for this one. You can see it's not at the Mount Washington Hotel. But it was a really successful event, and it was very powerful. The lights went off, and talk about resiliency. All the kids, they pulled out their cell phones and lit up the whole place. When the power went out, it was during a thunderstorm. It was incredible and really moving event. So we got a lot of great responses from it. MUR was there, but it wasn't always great. So after this, I moved on. This got me my job at the consortium, which was also another great thing that happened here. I got a better job. I was a teacher at the time, and it was a student project for the opioid situation, and the idea was to give youth the power to solve it. Okay, so we wanted to give them the power, the complete control and power over this event, and I was given the freedom to let them do that. So it was great. And then I got my job, and I wasn't allowed to be involved, and our team wasn't really involved, so some adults wanted to take it over. I'll just use that expression. The adults wanted control of it. And the next event or two that they had was not successful because they were imposing an adult agenda. They were doing what they thought they should do, but they weren't really listening. We got it back, and I can tell you, we poll the youth. We use evaluations from each one of these, and we really see what they want. We see how they want these events to run. We see what they want to do, and then we let them run it. We use YLTA. We use their leadership to help us facilitate some of the the icebreakers and some of the coordination. We get great partnership with them. Let's see what else we got here. So yeah, it's about the same thing, giving them the power to empower. When we got it back, it turned into this event, over 200 kids. You can see, they call out what speakers they want. There's Justin Spencer from Chaos and Kindness. So they want him, they get him. We do what they tell us, basically. All right. So as far as data goes, our pre and post evaluations of these conferences, they're incredibly valuable. and I've watched them go up and down, but I can tell you, the greatest success that we've had was at the last conference. We got 120 evaluations, and I kid you not, there was 119 of them, almost 120 of them were all positive, saying that they want us to continue what we're doing. And the only thing was the cold cucumber soup. That was the only complaint. Mount Washington has to cater the event. We can't bring in our own food. But that was the only real complaint. So, of all the events, we've been successful, and it's because we're listening to them. It's because we don't dictate what we think they should be having and listening to. We let them speak to each other and empower each other. Hopefully that will drive everything in a more positive direction. Because in the North Country, it might not seem like there's a lot to do. You might seem disconnected from the rest of the world. The same problems exist all over, but there's a feeling of despair that we're trying to change. So we're doing it by celebrating the youth rather than trying to tell them not what to do, but we were trying to get more kids to realize that when 80% of your peers are not vaping, that's the in crowd. That's being more, if you want to fit in with the 80% that are not vaping, okay? So again, we asked the question, how does it inform what we do? How do we use the data to leverage success? How do we listen to our youth, which is probably the most important, knowing how to listen, and how well do we speak their language? I think the biggest thing we can do is know when to step in and when to step out. I think that's where a lot of people have problems when adults are. I'm a coach, and I think as I get older, I know better when to let things go and when to pull back. But even I have a fight team, so we do fighting. But the most traumatic is probably teaching my daughter how to drive. A 15-year-old to drive a. That scares the hell out of me, but, but knowing when to let her go, even though I'm sitting there like dying inside because I don't trust her, I have to trust her, right? But you got to know when to tell her, you have to know when and when not to, because you have to give them trust. And that's an analogy that I thought of when I was thinking of this, knowing when to grab the wheel, but knowing when to just sit back and hope for the best. So, that's pretty much it. I've tried to speed it up for you.
Thanks.
You're welcome. Any questions?
So far, it is a group discussion, so I think that questions for Greg, Liz, and for our getting to why could happen during that discussion that Jill will lead us through already. And thanks again to all our speakers.
Yeah, exactly, and that's exactly what I just wanted to say. Let's celebrate their successes and all of our successes and give them another round of applause. So, as many of you know, every time I go out and talk to all of you, especially when I'm doing these prevention listening sessions across the state, what I am saying is, when you give individuals a voice and you recognize the intrinsic value that they have in prevention and in the continuum of care, then good things happen and things change. And we are seeing that, and many, many of you are doing that currently within your own organizations. First, I want to ask, are there any questions or reflections to any of the speakers that we've already heard from today?
I want to know how Vermont can pay for the middle school YRBS.
How can Vermont pay for the middle school YRBS? How is it funded?
I believe it's funded through the Department of Health.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Are we listening? Yeah, right. Thank you.
Yeah, it moved from the Agency of Education to Department of Health.
That's great.
Very high rate
Are there questions? Any other questions that you have? So now I want to hear from other organizations, because I know this is happening in other regions and within the DFCs and within our direct prevention services and within many of our programs, including within our schools for SAP programs. Is anybody wanting to share some similar experiences that they have had using data to help drive decisions by asking youth or young adults or older adults?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, Bridget Taylor. I'm with Nahatica now, but I was in a DFC in Sullivan County for 5 years. I'm waving at the names I recognize. I hope you're all waving back. But one of the things I wanted to say, especially since Vermont is here, is that where we were geographically, we were right next to Windsor County, Vermont. And so one of the things I think is always important when we look at YRBS data, not necessarily when you're running, a workshop with kids, and not necessarily when you're in Manchester, but in terms of planning and looking at the big pictures, look at where you're located, because some communities are very, I don't want to use the word insular because it sounds so negative, but some communities are very self-contained. That's the word I'm looking for. And, it may be that the kids in one school are mostly hanging out with the kids in one school, but some communities very much cross either a regional border or a state border. We have borders with Maine, we have borders with Mass, we have borders with Vermont. And sometimes looking at where those patterns are can be really helpful, especially if the kids start telling you, everybody gets their alcohol at the package store over at such and such a place.
Thank you, Bridget. Marissa?
Yeah, should I?
Nope, coming over to you.
Yeah.
So at the Teen Institute, I think there's a lot of ways in which our work crosses over with this, but certainly in listening to you getting to why, there's a lot of ways in which our Leaders in Prevention program for middle school students dovetails with different points of that process. Students attend in teams of typically 8 or so kids from either a school or a community group, an after-school program. And throughout the course of a weekend or a Friday to Sunday, we take them through a public health planning process. If you're familiar with the SPIF, the Strategic Prevention Framework, you would see a lot of similarities there. So they're really talking about what's going on in their community, what are they seeing in their school and their community, and then talking about what do they think is, those root cause things, right? What do they think is contributing to that? And then what could they do, to start that action plan? What could they do that would impact those problems they see? So that's, super exciting. And we, because of the style of the program, we haven't brought in as much of that specific data because we have students coming from lots of different parts of the state and a few groups from out of state too. But certainly getting their insight around those issues and then seeing what they do back in their community for prevention projects is really exciting. So.
What are some examples of the prevention projects they've done?
I can bump it over to our friends in Manchester because one of their middle school groups, there was a team last year that attended LIP, was pretty recently featured on WMUR for a vaping awareness project that they were working on. And in a very similar way, yes, 8 kids came and attended that specific Leaders in Prevention program, but the group that worked on that at the school is broader than that, right? So they brought it back, got more people excited and engaged about what their action plan was, and worked in and had a chance for leadership opportunities for students who weren't necessarily part of the retreat, but that, energy focused outward and got more and more people involved. That one was pretty substance specific. What are some other great examples? Yeah, so he can, what have your folks done?
So my kids went to the Leaders in Prevention training that weekend and decided that bullying was a really big problem in their area. And then you guys asked what you wanted them to do about it. And they said, we're going to hold a festival. And I said, what? I said, okay. So But they were really passionate about it, they were really driven, and they were able to put together an entire festival for not only their town, but the entire community, so 8 surrounding towns, in like a matter of 2 or 3 months, and they got attendance from over like 200 or 300 people there. WMUR showed up, a couple different local news stations showed up and like interviewed them on why they were doing it. And because of LIFT, they had like this whole action plan and game plan and like messages that they wanted to spread, and were able to accomplish it really well.
And I just want to add one other point around our Leaders in Prevention weekend is that they are coming together with teams from other parts of the state. So they're both being able to share their experiences, but also see the differences that are being experienced throughout. So we had 2 teams that were working together on one workshop, and one team was identifying that understanding around diversity was really low in their school when they saw how high it was in the other school. And that impacted them greatly. Like seeing that, oh, our understanding of diversity is really down here and we need to increase that was incredible. But then they also get to see where like Manchester kids and North Country kids have a lot of shared experiences as well. So it gives them that really rich understanding of those shared things.
So more again about the strength-based and what we have in common as opposed to what we have that is different, that is really driving. And I think that really speaks to sometimes when we are concerned about affluent areas versus, you know, non-affluent or however you categorize them. When you bring students together, that really goes away. So that's good, yes.
Could I say something for a minute? Sure. I left some folders, some contact information in the back of the room. I've tried this whole new program this year. I've been working on it for a couple of years. And what I've found out through 30 years of law enforcement, it breaks my heart. I mean, I see a lot of things happen, but what breaks my heart the most are these kids that are losing faith. They don't have hope. Some of these kids go home to houses that the parents have addiction problems and everything else. And they're feeling if the parents are like that, I can't do anything with my life. The message I try to give these kids right now, have faith, have perseverance, and don't give up. A lot of these kids, I see them in high school, they gave up on middle school, and it's like they can't go any further. You know, I see them, it kills me. Everything that comes out of their mouth is negative. So basically, when I'm starting, I have this whole thing, it's positive, 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 positive. You're on this earth for this short period of time. You're meant to do something on this earth, and basically, you don't waste your life. You know, I've gone through everything in my life, from my wife committing suicide to 2 tours in Vietnam to seeing death and everything, and we're all here for a short period of time. No one's going to be here in another 100 years. I just want to thank everybody so much from the bottom of my heart, everybody doing what they do, and what you people over here from Vermont are doing was very inspiring today. So I guess everybody's got their little niche. I'm trying mine. Thank you.
Thank you, John. And you said your material's on the back table.
Yes.
Thank you for that, thank you. Are there organizations that are thinking about starting to engage youth or young adults or other populations in these conversations and things that you learned today that you'll be taking back to your regions? Lindsay, I was thinking of what our conversations, because I love to just call on people. Lindsay, I was thinking about our conversation where you were talking about bringing parents and their students together to talk about the shared experiences of stress. Yeah, were there lessons learned today that you thought you could take away?
Oh, definitely. And I think using, because before we were going to use both voices, like the parents and youth, which we still are going to do, but it'd be nice to have the youth share their own experiences instead of us kind of sharing what they said. Letting them talk to the parents, I think, is more impactful than them telling me and then me sharing it with them.
Yeah. No, I agree. John, and then Kelly.
Peter, because I know he raised the hand before.
Oh, Peter, I'm sorry, I'm short.
No worries.
I know it's hard
This
to,
is my first
people don't know
community
that.
practice meeting. We have a new coalition in Keene, and I'm inspired from what I've seen and heard today, so I'm going to go back with new energy and hopefully make some of these things happen in the Keene area.
That's great.
Thank you.
Good to hear.
So I'll be reaching out to a lot of you.
Contact us on your website.
Just in terms of takeaways from today in the Winnipesaukee Public Health Region, there's a really robust group of us in the regional leadership team who have always worked to engage youth and have them at the table. We have 2 middle school representatives as part of our regional leadership team. For the first time ever, it's typically been high school in the past. But I really love it's really taken a while to get here. In my 5th year there, we're having our first ever Youth Regional Summit, Partners in Community Wellness Summit, that is focused on youth. It's totally 100% facilitated by youth. But when I heard the folks from Vermont speak, and then even just my colleagues that I get to see pretty regularly, I really got energized, and there was some buzz. These are my regional people, my DFC and diversion, and folks at the table I work with pretty regularly. I was just thinking how inspiring that assessment that you're doing with youth regionally, and then breaking that down community-wide, and us being in positions where we have the opportunity to really provide some heavy-duty TA and support with that around the spiffs, and digging deeper into the whys. It's stuff we know, but it's reinvigorating. It's really inspiring. So I appreciate all the sentiments today, for sure.
So, what's that? I'm sorry.
I'm curious if there's information on the stress thing, or if that's open to anybody, if you could promote.
We haven't even where we're going to be on it. It was just a discussion.
Oh, I thought it was said it was tomorrow.
No, that's
a
the college one. That's a different event.
Yeah, that's it. We had alluded to earlier about the slow rollout of the YRBS. That's not going to go away anytime soon. I'm here to tell you it might even be slower this year, unfortunately. But, you know, there are other data sources. But let me get back to the YRBS. The YRBS is definitely a tool and a catalyst because it is conducted in New Hampshire in high schools and sometimes within the middle schools. But there is a lot of other data sources that we can utilize, especially when you want to get to the root causes. So while the YRBS can be a springboard, like Vermont has mentioned, we also want to be cognizant of what else is available that we can use to look at the root causes and also to look at the strength-based parts of things. The slide before, I'm not going to touch anything because I seem to mess everything up. The slide before, through the Governor's Commission on Alcohol and Other Drugs, there is a task force called the Data and Evaluation Task Force. In other states, it is called the State Epidemiology Outcome Work Group. It's the same thing, but this brings together a group of diverse professionals, typically through state government, that are all data stewards. Rachel sits on this, I sit on this, I don't know why I sit on this, but I sit on this. Probably because they want the one person to be like, what? What is that circle? So that's why they bring me on board. Oh, also I pay for it. So there is a rich source of data that really gets to that root cause. It is anything from emergency room visits, chief complaints at hospitals, diversion data. There is a limited amount of prevention data, but there are prevention data that's related to the 211 calls, who's calling for prevention. and education services. Actually, as of last year, 37% of calls to our addiction crisis 211 was to ask for prevention or education services. So that's a very good sign. Parents in treatment, they're really concerned about ensuring that there's prevention. So they're asking for it. Individuals in recovery, same thing. People are asking for prevention, and we need to highlight that. There are data sources. There was a link that was on a slide before that I'm not touching, that you all can access. One of the greatest sources of data that we do have, there's also a handout.
And I can post this as a resource on our page, so you can have the link.
She can post it on the resource page, and I believe it's also in your handout as well.
That 211 data, is that on here?
No, it's not, no, but we can get that data. Yep, we can get that data. And we can get it on a regional basis as well, and down to the town level. It's not by Regional Public Health Network, but it is by the regions. One of the greatest sources of data that I think folks should really become familiar with, and if you're not, is Robert Wood Johnson has a wonderful data program and a model that they have used, which is the county health rankings. The reason I like it is because it looks at social determinants of health, and it is a model that we all need to be mindful of, because for so long we have concentrated on the substance, we've concentrated on the, access to marijuana, the use of alcohol, the use of tobacco, the use of vaping. But what is driving that? Right. Oftentimes it is those social determinants of health that's behind that. And we have proven this in, there was a study that was conducted actually by the Winnipesaukee Regional Public Health Network a few years ago, using YRBS data and other data that showed a correlation between food scarcity and mental health. Individuals that are concerned about where their food, their next meal is coming from, oftentimes exhibit signs of depression and anxiety. It's a no-brainer. We all know this. But we have so often concentrated on the YRBS and the emergency room data and the naloxone and the et cetera. We need that data, don't get me wrong. But we also need our social determinants of health data. So that's the bigger dive that we need to do, that why, getting to the why that we talked about. We did that with the young adult assessment, and this is what we also need to do with other populations. Excuse me. So, to wrap up quickly, if you haven't done so already, check out the New Hampshire County rankings for through the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation. I stumbled on that the other day, and I totally said Johnson, Robert, and Wood. Don't know why. But so Robert Wood Johnson, New Hampshire County Health Ranking. Please check it out. It's good. Make sure you're doing that deeper dive. With that, I am going to wrap it up with Melissa. I don't know if she has any last-minute things. The next meeting is on March 11th, which is, in 6 days before the greatest holiday on earth, St. Patrick's Day. Yes?
Yes.
So, wear your green in March. And we will bring green cookies as well.
I won't be here.
Oh, she'll be happy. Oh, that's right. Melissa, I don't know if you've noticed, Melissa's having a baby. I am as well. But Melissa's having a baby, and she will be out on maternity leave at that time.
I'll miss the celebration.
She'll miss the celebration, but wear your green. I do want to say that I believe the Vermont folks are going to stay around, so thank you all for your time and energy. And with regards to anything you need for data, don't forget the New Hampshire Center for Excellence.
And with that, can I ask a question? Is your new staff person here?
Olivia is here.
Hi, Olivia. Welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. So normally on these slides, I have the dates for the upcoming meetings. So they're on the Community of Practice website, but as Jill said, our next meeting is March 11th. And then we have a meeting on May 13th, July 8th, September 9th, and November 10th, which is actually a Tuesday, not a Wednesday because of the Veterans Day holiday. We have our fancy name tags. Please return these so we can reuse them. That's much appreciated. And so, if you do have an evaluation, please check out with Hannah so we can get that CPS credit administered to you. And we do have this room till 1 p.m., so if there is any networking that needs to happen, Jill is going to kind of take a group over here for a discussion. But other than that, the room can be used for you all to kind of use as networking. And check out the resource table. Thank you all for coming. We'll see you in March. I won't, but I'll see you in May. Thanks, everyone.